What does the term trained professional mean? Well, I guess it means you're trained and you're professional. I'd like to take first, though, the second term, professional, for I think it has two different meanings. In the sports arena, there's the amateurs and there's the pro ranks, i.e. the professional sports players. You might say the PGA, Pro Golf Classics, or Pro Golf Association. The pros, in other words, are those who have elevated their skills to a hugely high level compared to most. They may have gotten excellent coaching, for instance. And I would say the coaches did not come from the college setting, the PhD, MD setting, and books setting. The pros in golf, the pros in basketball, the pros on the football teams that we so venerate and pay a lot of money to watch or love watching at home on television did not get this from a brick-and-mortar institution. They did not obtain a PhD in their sport, and they did not go to school to get it either, in general. They went to top performers. They invented it on their own sometimes even, or they did massive amounts of work, like the few football players, for instance, who stayed in the gym working very hard when everyone else went home. And so that, too, a huge component. Hard work in excess of what most people talk about. This is found whether you look at the pros in basketball, the pros in football, or even pros in acting, say, and bodybuilding. Arnold Schwarzenegger, for instance, worked his butt off, as he calls it, in the gym and even taking accent removal lessons, and while having a construction job and studying in college. Some call it the work ethic, but at any rate, there is justification, I believe, for why such massive amounts of hard work are required in any area, generally speaking, to pull out ahead. And then these are called professionals when it's in the sports arena or sometimes also in acting. But there is a different type and connotation of professional also. There's what I call the academic-based professional, whereupon they are deemed professional if they have a piece of paper, a license. Once that is acquired, they are deemed professional by way of the piece of paper, not skill level. Now granted, it takes a certain acumen, a certain degree of quantity, of capacity rather, to acquire a piece of paper at the PhD or MD level. You have to have a certain tenacity. You have to have certain things going for you. You certainly have to stay out of prison or Skid Row. If you're a heroin addict, you probably won't be able to attain this piece of paper that says you're a professional. But do we call a great football player a professional because they have a degree, i.e. a piece of paper on the wall saying they are a pro? I would also say the pro, in the true sense, including in sports, is the person who can deliver quantifiable results, or results that might not be quantifiable, say a great actor or actress's performances, but which have massive appeal, and thus quantifiable, you might say, in box office dollars. So that then, in turn, a form of quantification, unless, of course, they wish to be what you might call a missionary type actor and charge almost nothing because they live in a cave, so to speak. Or they give it all away, almost all of it away. Case in point, by the way, the writer equivalent, J.K. Rowling, who wrote various fantasy books. And she, at one point then, rivaling the Queen of England in how much money she had made, and she gave it all away, basically speaking, later in life. So these pros in acting, or writing, if you will, have a certain strong, outsized appeal, regardless of whether one wants to say that fantasy is the best way in life, say, or watching movies, the best way in life of getting ahead in the long run in life as to your happiness level. Noting that Pope Francis hasn't watched television in over 20 years. But how many professionals in the academic realm have a large box office appeal, or so to speak, a huge following? I don't think it happens very often. In comparison, again, to a sports professional, an acting professional, or a writing professional. Isn't that then why some books hit the bestseller chart? You might call them pro books, and their fellow writers are green often with envy. Same even in art, noting that Picasso died with $700 million to his name and once sold a napkin with a sketch on it for $1 million. You might call certain artists professional artists for their outsized impact in certain ways. They're typically wanting the money to follow too, not giving it away for free, like a very few do in the religious sphere called missionaries, or a very few doctors too, such as perhaps those working on the ship Hope, or who go to Africa like Albert Schweitzer for many, many years, or in certain avenues the concept of a missionary in general, who generally speaking does not die with millions or billions in the bank. They give things away, basically, because their needs are far less than many others' needs, you might argue. Unless, of course, they want to accumulate large sums and then give it away philanthropically. That then is a different ball of wax, I believe. Now, I would have to say, if somebody calls themselves a professional, but either the results are not quantifiable, and so how do you quantify it, or the box office appeal, so to speak, the draw, is not there either in terms of numbers of people who find it appealing, useful, then I would say maybe this often gets justified as being professional all the less or all the more because it is said the whole field is simply an art form. And so what do you expect? Or maybe the bad results or questionable results are said to be explained by the consumer or sometimes patient having had a pre-existing condition anyway. And so what do you expect? There being really a hopeless situation involved from the get-go. But if you consider, when you buy a car, it's going to require gas. And you want a, quote, professional to provide gas. If they said that once filled up as per gas in your tank, that if it sputtered and stopped half the time, that's simply because creating gas is still an art form, or that your car had a pre-existing condition, so it's not the professional gas purveyor's problem, it's your car's pre-existing condition, genetically or what have you, well then this might be kind of funny, wouldn't it? Okay, the next concept being trained. If you consider, again, the sports arena, do you go and pay a lot of tickets, money for a ticket to a pro ball game, or do you watch a pro ball game, or even say a good college game on television, because the players have been trained specifically, we're talking about in a college, or maybe they say they were trained by reading a lot of books on their own at home. Do you really care that they did training activity? Or do you want specific results from what they had been quote-unquote trained in? That's much the talk then concerning courses, online courses, and course creating. It being said over and over, people don't buy the courses per se, they buy or want results. Well, isn't that what we want too in a sports figure or when we watch television? We really don't care a hoot, I might say, what schools an actor or actress went to or the sports figures. We just want the results. We want either to see a good game played technically and with professionalism as per their how they comport themselves on the playing field or ball field, and we want to see we just want to see results. We don't care how they got the results. We don't care how they got their training, in other words. But therein lies the rub. For what does it mean to be trained? In sports, it means to acquire a certain level of performance. And that, in turn, requires iterative improvement that sticks. And so I would bring up this analogy. Our body, in order to combat certain diseases we've identified to include, rubella, the mumps. I'm not a physician. I don't know all the illnesses involved, but we have developed inoculations to train our immune system to fight off certain diseases. Thus, the inoculation trains our body. And yet, the training does not last forever, so we need repeat shots. Hence, even the COVID is not addressed with just one shot that trains us for life, but we need several training shots, if you will, and what they then call a booster shot, training shot. One administration of a training action, shall we say, does not train your body for life concerning COVID, and in fact we want more and more and better training shots all the time. And yet, to say someone is trained educationally implies that they went through a shot, so to speak, called 4, 8, or 12 years of college with certain procedures involved, classroom writing, dissertation writing perhaps, rounds on the floor of a medical school. That's considered training, and yet does it stick? And has it accrued thus? In sports, it's far easier to accrue than it is with knowledge in the brain. Psychologists have known this for years. But in general, if you build something on a sand and at night the water washes it away or the wind washes it away, has it been built? Has the brick wall been built in terms of being trained? The actions alone do not comprise the training. It's what sticks that comprises the training. Likewise, an inoculation is not an inoculation if it only lasts one day. Your body has not been trained. Training has to last for a certain length of time. For instance, if you're a basketball pro, or take the analogy of riding a bike. If you learn how to ride a bike, you will have trained yourself to be having this skill for a long time to come, but not forever. If you learn how to ride a bike in childhood and then stop at age 20, you take it up at 90, you probably will have forgotten too much to be able to ride that bike, regardless of your bodily condition. But the training will last a considerable span of time. Yet in the knowledge department, our minds are quite different. If you talk to people, say, in pharmacy school or anything else. They will say they can't remember things a week later without review. And who's going to review down the line what they studied in medical school or pharmacy school to maintain training on esoteric things, such as a whole course for half a year on the names of all your bones called anatomy class? It's rather superfluous, a bunch of jumping through hoops to get the degree. Thus, it is left to slide in terms of reviewing because it's not considered essential. Now, some would say, though, their skills are kept up to date and improved upon by continuing education courses that are required for their career field. But do these address essentials, such as reading, writing, and arithmetic, so to speak, and moreover, mathematics and the respect level of our words we use? These, if never even attained in the first place, certainly can't be reviewed, and were never trained into us to begin with, thus, in any way, shape, or fashion. So just to recap, professional can mean two things, in my opinion. It can mean a certain skill level acquired, or it can simply mean a piece of paper when acquired, alternatively, or certain actions gone through that don't necessarily improve your skill level. For instance, going to class or reading a book does not necessarily mean you improved your skill, let alone how long the skill was improved upon. Which then goes, of course, to the second topic of not only what is the skill level as per professional, but in general, how long did it last, this supposed skill acquired? Was it long-term? Then you're trained. If it was short-term, I don't know that we have a terminology for it, other than what they said at West Point concerning the approach to knowledge in a college setting, spec and dump. In other words, knowledge attained to a high degree, it was specced, and then a week later dumped, and on to the next, and the next, and the next. A game, so to speak, to achieve oftentimes just a piece of paper put on a wall that says ultimately one is trained and a professional. One last note. When I was in the military, we had a lieutenant colonel tell us that it was essential that no matter what else, our boots be spotless at all times in terms of being brushed. In other words, we had to look professional, and he deemed this was one of the best ways. Thus, we had to look the part of the professional. Similarly, what physician does not wear a white coat, or a pharmacist a white coat, and the physician often a stethoscope also? These all convey that one is a professional. In other words, one looks professional. You might say, alternatively, your mother would want you to look professional by going out in a clean shirt that is not wrinkled and your hair combed, and you've had a shower so you do not smell considerably. And maybe if a female, that you've put on makeup. So thus, a mother wants their child to look professional. But that doesn't say anything about the heart or the intellect. You simply have the uniform on, thus you are professional because of the external appearances that generally are polished, optimized in that fashion. You might say thus the professional look is the person who has their act together in terms of lipstick they have put on in various fashions, whether it is the white coat lipstick or the stethoscope lipstick or the combed hair lipstick or having taken a shower or bath lipstick, or finally the professional look of a well-lit office that is not cluttered, a car that is not cluttered, a car that is well washed, a car that has no dents, and finally, an expensive looking everything. Hence, certain graduate schools at the quote professional level strongly encourage their students to look professional by wearing ensembles of clothing that are very expensive and optimized in general. This then is the professional look, and what we call all too often being a professional. You might say too, a house on the higher end with an immaculately manicured lawn and shrubbery is a professional house, in that it looks perfected and expensive on the outside, but who knows what goes on the inside. A little facetious, humorous joke here at the end then. A professional can also be a person who has a checkbook cover that is gilded in 24 karat gold. The checkbook conveys professionalism to the extent it looks expensive and polished, with no fingerprints, no stains. But what is inside could be a checkbook balance that is below zero or has $10 in it. The contents of the checkbook are not considered professional, but the outside is. And so these are my thoughts then on what is a trained professional. It can be two different things, I believe. Professional and trained. Two different concepts and yet joined together, meaning two different things in the areas, I believe, of sports, acting, or good high-demand writing, that is, versus the area of academics, particularly in the people area. I might make one final last note. On Wall Street, they do not care probably what you wear. They do not care what degrees you have on the wall. They want results, and it can be quantified. And so they don't care per se, I believe, whether you are a trained professional. What they want is dollars and cents proof that you can do the job that they want done. What they want is financial dollars and cents that are quantifiable on a computer screen or printout. How you got that, they do not care. And they don't care if you call yourself a trained professional. What they want is someone who can generate results. And in sports, acting, certain forms of writing, maybe certain forms of art, it is the results that count and are wanted, not whether you are trained or are professional. Those words can mean two different things in the two different camps. Thoughts here?